We are back. It is Friday afternoon already. I cannot believe how quickly this week has gone with all of these lives. It's so good to get to be here with you again. I'm excited. I got a new camera. I think it might be a little crooked at the moment, but hey, I think it's working, which is most important. So, as we're all arriving here today, go ahead and take a few breaths, get yourself comfortable. I hope you can stay for the whole half hour or however long we stay for. Hopefully, there'll be some questions and discussion points. I'm just really glad to get to be here with you today. It's been a lot to think about for me this week around what feels important, what feels like it would be impactful to share, both with folks who are just dipping a toe in the water around trauma awareness, maybe just now becoming aware that becoming a trauma-informed provider, it could be really beneficial to yourself and your clients or your patients or whoever your people are. Maybe you've been in this world for a long time and you know the value of this ongoing practice of being trauma aware. It truly is a practice. It's always unfolding. We're always learning more. And so I'm just grateful you are here. I would love, if you are here, to have you write your name and where you are in the world in the comments. It's so nice to know who's here instead of talking to a blank screen. Yeah, and if as we're arriving, if it feels good to take some breaths, drop the weight of your body down onto the support beneath you, and see if it's possible to let yourself be just 5% more comfortable. That can be a nice way to receive this conversation. It's good to practice being resourced and regulated anytime we're in the field of trauma, even if we're talking about it. If we carry trauma, as most of us do, if not everyone, it absolutely can bring up stuff that we've been through, stressful experiences, traumas, etc. So we just want to hold it with the most amount of gentleness and spaciousness that we can. Hey, Taylor, you are here. So good to see you here. Sort of. I wish I could see you, but I'm going to imagine you in my mind's eye. Welcome. I'm really glad you're here. Feel free to bring all your questions and comments and discussion pieces. Today, the topic is really around, the catchy topic for today. You always want to list a few things that you can pull off in a Facebook Live. So we're going to do those 3 and then probably a lot more. But it's the 3 biggest ways you're making trauma awareness work harder than it needs to be. And I just wanted to ask you all who are here, if you're up for writing in the comments, what you think those things might be. What might the 3 biggest ways you're making trauma awareness harder than it needs to be? What might those be? Let's brainstorm together. So feel free to write those in the chat. Hopefully your fingers can type quickly. And there are no wrong answers here, but I like to actually have a discussion instead of me just talking at a screen. So let's just take a few breaths and see if anyone feels up for writing those. Yep, that happens. I've always been an awkward drinker. Okay, I'm not seeing comments, but I'm so happy to talk about this. I just lost viewers. That's so funny. I want to start off with the first bullet point, and there really is no hierarchy here of these things, but my hope is it helps you be here with more ease in this work of trauma-informed care and trauma awareness. One thing that seems totally normal to do, to react with, when somebody shares some challenging experience, stressful experience, overwhelming or frightening experience, a trauma they've experienced, when you can feel that in the room with you or when they actually share it with you, for whatever reason, whatever work you're doing, we all know it can come out at any time, regardless if it's the focus of our work. And the number one thing we want to remember is that when we become alarmed, we lose connection. And it takes a lot more energy to manage things when we lose connection. So if we can actually take a breath and remember there's nothing to be alarmed about here, of course we can have empathy, we can feel angry or protective of them or sad. But if we can have it in ourselves to stay centered, to be able to stay connected to our resources, stay regulated, have our breath be steady, have an inner connection with ourselves so that we feel supported internally, we can refrain from having an alarm response, because the people that we're working with then can often sense that. Most folks with trauma are looking all over the place for people that feel scared in their presence or afraid or not fully connected or not liking what they're doing, anything to feel shame about. So if we become alarmed, they very likely will become alarmed, which can cause a shame response. And shame is probably the number one thing that gets in the way of resolving trauma. Shame it just carries so many layers with it, right? It is really hard to get out from underneath. It's I am bad, I am wrong experience. So when we can instead stay curious, stay present, stay calm, mirror some really, meaningful, genuine emotions back to them, ask them to share more if that's appropriate for the situation you're in, they are going to stay regulated too, instead of going into a shame spiral and going into a trauma response around that or a stress response around that. So we can remember that when we become alarmed, we lose connection. And when we stay present and curious and connected, that is the best recipe for moving through whatever that experience is where the trauma gets kicked up, feeling regulated, with everyone feeling regulated. So that's the number one thing. And it actually will bring more ease into your system and more confidence in your system, knowing that you don't have to go to that place, that you have the option to stay present and curious, and that will create connection. For a long time, I felt like I should be alarmed because it was so striking what so many of my clients shared with me. I mean, the stories and experiences that I have heard, it's so much. And I know many of you experienced that too. And so in my early years, I thought it was important to seem alarmed because I wanted them to know that what they were sharing was a really big deal. And I love that intention, and we can do that in other ways. We could do it through concern or helping to make sure they're safe now, or helping to show them that they feel safe enough in our spaces, to really stay present, to be curious, to be listening, and to let them know we're here. But we don't need to go into that state of alarm in order for them to feel really held and really heard. So that's the first one. Feel free to write in the comments. What does that make you thinking about? How is that impacting you? What happens in your body when you hear that? Does it create more alarm? Does it create any spaciousness or calmness? That one was definitely a game changer for me as somebody who carries trauma, because I realized how many experiences in my life I have felt like people are overwhelmed or scared by me or my stories. And that reaction when people pull back, it really is deeply impactful. And so we would just want to be right there with people with whatever they are bringing. So that's the first one. And if you're here now, just arriving, feel free to introduce yourself. Let us know where you are. Number 2, again, in no particular order, excuse me, is that we oftentimes, when trauma shows up in our presence, whether we can sense it or whether it's being shared explicitly with us, there's a way that a lot of us can go into tiptoe mode, where we're tiptoeing around people who have experienced trauma because we don't want to trigger them. Instead of using the word trigger, we can use activate, because even the word trigger can remind somebody with trauma to go find their triggers, and it's just not helpful. So when somebody's activated, We don't want to tiptoe around them and treat them like they're fragile, or make them feel like we need to overly accommodate them, or like it's a big deal or super stressful to have to take care of them. We don't have to be perfect about holding them well in their trauma, because that exacerbates many people's traumas. Doing that perfectionist thing can be a recapitulation of trauma, where we're not actually being fully ourselves, which means they can't fully be their selves, and everybody's holding their breath and everybody's contracted and nobody's actually able to connect because there's fear in this space. And the intention to really want to care for people with trauma really well and not have them feel harmed or hurt is absolutely beautiful. And so many of us have it, but it can result in this perfectionist behavior so much that it may mean it makes us not want to take clients on, or whatever your job is, because, oh, what if I harm them? What if I hurt them? And it's so important, yes, to become more and more aware of how to care for and tend to folks with trauma, but we don't need to do it perfectly. We actually can't. Otherwise, we're just in that trauma dynamic with them. And when we're tiptoeing around them, it can send those messages that send somebody into that shame spiral again of, oh, they're too much, or they need too much, or they're too big, or too little, or too something. And again, shame is that thing that disconnects us and pulls us out of the present moment and into those maybe fight, flight, freeze, collapse, fawning experiences. Those are 5 things that can happen in response to a stress response or a trauma response. Instead, what we can do is know that we're doing the best we can at any given time. We can always be open to learning and to always be doing our work around becoming more trauma aware. We can always be open to feedback and taking responsibility for when we miss people, or got something wrong, or it felt like we got something wrong to them. We can kind of check those parts of ourselves that get really insecure if negative feedback comes our way, and go, yeah, I am the kind of person that I've got it in me. I can receive feedback. I have that much capacity. All of us, pretty much all of us, have a lot of space to grow in that area. So we can just be open to the possibility of, I can be the kind of person that can receive feedback. Positive, negative, neither. This is a really important way to give ourselves permission to do that, so that we don't have to tiptoe or be perfect at holding space for folks with trauma. And there was one other thing. We can always make repairs. We can always come back. And if we are open to that learning experience, we learn about each person individually. There's not a one-size-fits-all trauma awareness for every person who has trauma. Everyone's nervous system is different. Everyone will respond to us differently. And so if we are available to make repairs and take responsibility and have these really meaningful conversations, that in itself can be incredibly healing. And it's something that so many people have never gotten in a conscious way. And so that means we don't have to tiptoe. We don't have to be perfect, because we can make repairs if we screw it up, which we will. It's okay to screw it up. It's actually good to screw it up. When we stay in the perfectionist dynamic, we are in possibly our own trauma response from our own histories, or we're getting drawn into their histories and showing up in a role that there's an unhealthy dynamic that may have something to do with their trauma history. So we don't want to do that. We don't need to do that. And we get a lot of our own energy back when we give ourselves permission to not have to tiptoe with people. When we don't tiptoe also, we show them that we also trust their innate capacity for healing, that we trust that they are finding their voice and their empowerments to say yeses or nos. We teach them how to do that. We're listening for those yeses and nos with them. So when we can be with them really confidently, that they will feel that confidence too, that you have confidence in them, and they'll be able to really bloom and heal and be in an empowered relationship with you, which is super cool. I love that. Annika, welcome. I'm going to read your question as I attempt to drink water one more time. It didn't go so well last time. Yeah. Yeah, I love this thought, Annika. Spaciousness and permission to sometimes, spaciousness and permission to pause before I respond. I notice sometimes my mind rushes to find the right way to respond rather than pause and feel myself, body, experience, and then responding. Remember, no one needs to be saved, and grounded, authentic response can be self, 100%. So we can all circle that as, something that we can do to give us back our energy. I love the spaciousness and permission to pause. For me, this is the experience of responding versus reacting, where we do feel like we need to fix something, figure something out, give advice, give someone a big insight or a big transformation because we're not trusting them to be tapped into their own wisdom, which is essentially the best thing we can do is pause, slow down, make space for them to actually have all of the answers themselves. Yeah. So the third one is it's a lot around the same thing that we were just talking about here. But it's when trauma shows up in the space, it can show up in all sorts of ways. And one thing we can do is kind of try to make a problem out of it. Try to start looking for what's wrong about what the person's doing so we can help them fix it. So we can do this practice or this technique to get rid of it, essentially. And so anytime we're trying to get rid of a trauma symptom, we are working directly against a very, very sophisticated survival strategy that very likely kept them alive, kept them connected to some sense of safety, love, or belonging. And so if we come in there with our swords and all of our techniques trying to get this mindset changed and have some other experience, as though there's something wrong with what they're doing or how they're feeling, it's going to be exhausting for us because it doesn't feel very good to be looking for problems. I get really tired when I'm doing that. And I also, in myself, have this like motor running of like, I need to do something here in order to feel like I'm helpful, effective, to not disappoint my client, this and that. I have a whole story. That's me in my own trauma that I need to regulate, right? When I'm not doing that, I'm not wasting energy. I'm present and I'm connected, and that fills me up. And I'm going, oh my goodness, isn't it incredible that you're experiencing these behaviors, these feelings, these emotions? They're telling us so much about what you learned how to do, how you had to survive. And we can really embrace that instead of try to cut it out or get it to go away or let it go. As somebody with trauma, anytime someone tells me to let it go, my response immediately is to want to punch them in the face. My whole body wants to fight. I go into fight when someone tells me to let it go. There is something that feels violent to me about trying to make these trauma responses go away. So my orientation is, how do we embrace it? How do we welcome it into our hearts? Yes, the behaviors that happen because of this might not be so effective, might actually be harmful to us or others or our relationships or our work. But what's underneath it is something that is incredibly important, that has to be honored and held with so much love and kindness and gentleness. When we start taking our swords out at it, even though of course we want it to go away because we want to feel better, that's where we can validate. When we take those swords out, it's like that survival system starts working just as hard as those swords are trying to work. And the trauma symptoms can get even louder and even bigger and even more strong. And when they're exacerbated like that, it can actually exhaust the client, maybe send them into old body memories where things are feeling similar to when we're pulling our swords out, trying to cut it out. But instead, when we can really honor it and understand and trust that there's a very important reason that it's here and that it's trying to do something that's actually trying to take care of us. It's trying to keep us safe. It's trying to keep us in connection. It's trying to help us belong, feel loved, stay alive. When we know that, we don't need to dig things up at the root. I'm so tired of hearing people talk about digging stuff up at the root. It makes me sick. We can tend to everything right here in the present moment. When we have a trauma response that's really taking us out, like a lot of depression or a lot of overwhelming feelings that are impacting the vibrancy of our life, we don't have to go all the way back to the root and dig it out. We can meet it right here and embrace what's happening right here and right now. Breathe it into our hearts, honor its vulnerability and tenderness, figure out what it wants and needs. And from there, that will heal all the way down to the root. It will just sweetly go all the way down to the root and nourish that root in a different way. So many people think when we've had challenging or really, really horrific past experiences that we need to go back there to rip them out and create a whole new reality. But the reality is the more we can turn towards these things with this eye for beauty and how incredible it is that this part of us has shown up to try to take care of us, even if it's not functional, it's going to heal so much more quickly because we're not fighting against it. It's when we fight against it and judge it and make it wrong that it comes on 10 times stronger. And I just want to say, it makes a lot of sense that we would think it would be a good idea to go in there and get rid of it. But when you know these things, it's kind of like an Aikido move. If any of you are into martial arts, it's like we move with the energy of it. We support it. We care for it. We nurture it. We honor it. And then there's more flow in every area of our life because we're not fighting against it. Aikido is about moving with the energy instead of against it. So these are 3 things that we can practice: not pathologizing, not making anyone wrong for their symptoms, not making the symptoms wrong, not making the emotions, the experiences they're having. We can just trust there's so much wisdom in them. That we don't have to be perfectionist tiptoers. We get to make repairs. We get to be human. We get to model that it's safe enough to have space for humanness and messiness. And we get to trust the powerful capacities and strength and resilience of our clients and our people. Folks with trauma are incredibly resilient. And to, instead of becoming alarmed when something really frightening gets brought up into the space where you just feel it, what kind of curiosity and presence and care can you bring to it and to yourself? All of this aims to move you away from burnout and towards ease in your practices. And for me, it has changed my life in terms of being exhausted and scared and feeling like I needed to put up all these bubbles of armor, working with trauma every day. Now it's just like, there's nothing wrong with it. So I don't have to protect myself from anything. I let it touch my heart and then it doesn't stick, you know. There's nothing wrong with it, so I don't need to fight against it. Any questions here? I see Kimberly, welcome. Thank you. Yeah, so Kimberly shared, I love that difference between responding and reacting. That is trauma. That's trauma healing. Trauma response is a reaction. It's a stressful reaction. It's called a stress response, but really it's a reaction where we don't have time to slow down enough to truly respond with presence and care. And so as we integrate and heal trauma, we're able to respond instead of react, and it feels so much better. And so we can model that for the people we work with. Annika, nothing to protect. Let it touch my heart. Yeah, I used to work so hard as an empath, trying to put up my bubble before my sessions and like put up my armor and put on all this stuff. But as soon as I realized that was actually draining me more than it was filling me up. This is me. It might be different for you. And when I don't make all this stuff scary, dark, horrific, bad, and I go, yes, okay, this is here. This is important. This matters. This is meaningful. These are survival strategies where I make it not wrong. There's nothing I'm fighting against in my own system. I'm just in connection with presence. Yeah. How do these half hours go by so quickly? It's pretty incredible. Annika and I actually just went and ate tacos and cupcakes, so I feel like my eyes are kind of doing this a little from the overwhelming sugar rush that we just had. We also had a couple very intense interactions with people, so my own system is kind of like calibrating to leaving my little bubble and being out in the world. It's really good to be here with you all. If you want to write in the comments anything that's impacted you from this and anything you want to take with you that's felt meaningful, that would be super awesome. It's always helpful for me to know what's landing or what's not. And we can even just take a few breaths. We've been here together for a little while. You can notice how connected are you to yourself in this moment? Is there anything that needs some nourishment or contact? And with those exhales, if it feels good, just drop your weight right back down onto the support beneath you, all the way down through the structures of the building that you're in, or maybe you're outside, all the way down into the support of the earth. Yeah. So I am so excited to be part of the Creating Safer Space revolution. And it is one of my babies, my online courses. And we've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and more of people who have signed up for Creating Safer Space, who have let me know it has changed how they work. It has changed how they are with clients. Their clients are getting so much bigger shifts in their life and feeling more connected in their sessions. It's such a beautiful community. It's an online space and course where you learn trauma awareness, and it's bite size. It's just like this, actually smaller bites even, that you can buy it today and start practicing it today. But even if you do that, we're doing a live experience that starts in the beginning of April, where you get to meet and ask all your questions. I get to share with you just like this. We're going to do some practices together, and there's an awesome online community of worldwide practitioners that are doing this work devoted to treating other human beings with this kind of care. And if you haven't gotten Creating Safer Space yet, I think a lot of the people here, most of the people here today, are already part of the course, which should actually say a lot, like that you come to the course if you still want to hear me talk. But it is just an ongoing thing that I'm always adding to, and a part of the lives are like adding updated information around what I'm always learning, because I'm always in a trauma training and I'm so fascinated about this and I'm such a nerd for it, and I just want to deliver you the latest stuff so that your work can feel easier, so that you can feel more confident, or if you're someone who's navigating trauma healing, that you can even advocate for yourself better and how you want to be cared for with your care providers. If you want to be part of that experience and you sign up today or in the next few days, you get to be part of the bonus experience before April. We're going to have a live call. We're going to have fun on that call. We're going to do practices, answer a bunch of questions. I already have a list of more and more questions that I've been wanting to get answered, and connect with your community members. So it would be so awesome to have you. If you are interested, I will put the link in the comments. It's creatingsaferspace.com. And I would just be so honored if you could join us. It is truly a revolution and such an honor to be with everyone who's interested in this. So go over there, sign up. You can be part of the bonus experience. You can start watching now, and then you'll be ready for the live calls in April. So good to be with you all. And I'm reading Taylor's comment here. I love the image of tending to the life above ground rather than trying to dig up the root. Yeah, me too. It's exhausting trying to do the root thing. I did it for a long time, a long time, both as a practitioner and as a person healing. And it just felt like a lot of dead ends. So this is a way that I have learned that I love and has changed my life, and also a lot of others who I work with. It is just such a, I'm trying not to swear, but it's just such a gift to be trauma aware in every single possible way. It makes life so much better and easier. All right. Have a great Friday or Saturday wherever you are. It's beautiful to be with you. Keep sending me your questions. I will keep incorporating them into the Creating Safer Space program. So as the questions show up, you get your answers and stay connected. All right. See you soon.